Okay, let's get started then. So let me introduce myself. I'm Cynthia Mark, the Global Product Marketing Lead for Alimera, and I will be the moderator for our webinar today. For those that are not familiar with Alimera, we provide a digital ecosystem for education and research. If you're looking for software and platforms to help with training or education purposes, you'll be speaking to the right people. And our topic today is on how you can boost software training with hands-on virtual labs. We're thankful to have Dipanjan Sankar and Denise Zolovov with us today. Our webinar today is slightly different from, I think, most webinars that you attend, which is a lot about presentations, and just that. Today, it's more a conversation. It's going to be a lot of questions and answers to understand more about the challenges in traditional software training. And of course, I think based on our experience, people are not aware of what a virtual lab is. So we'll be touching a bit of all this, but feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll be moderating that. And of course, the questions that I will be asking the panelists today are questions that we have been receiving from our customers around the world. So, but before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes. Firstly, today's session is being recorded so that it'll be available for viewing post-webinar. And of course, if you have any questions for the speakers, please use the chat feature in this webinar and post your questions there. So to begin, let's start with some introductions. Dipanjan, let's share a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, folks. I'm Dipanjan. You can call me DJ. I work as a lead data scientist in SIT Academy. I'm also Google developer, expert in machine learning. I've worked in the fields of data science and software engineering over the last 9+ years. And I've also conducted trainings and entire courses for a lot of organizations, including universities, as well as companies in the area specifically around artificial intelligence, data science, and machine learning.
Thank you for the introduction. That's a lot of experience that you have there in teaching and learning and training people. Okay, next, Denise, let's share about yourself.
Okay, hello everyone. Well, I'm the product manager in Alimera, working on the virtual lab product. But from my previous experience, I have more than 15 years of the professor in university, teaching mostly IT and computer science courses. So I did a lot of trainings to students on how to use some software, and how to build some software. Also, I have experience for several years of managing training programs in the university, so I know how to do that, how to organize that. And also, I'm spent several years of managing IT infrastructure for the universities and companies. So I did preparations of the training infrastructure as well, and I know it could be very tedious sometimes, time-consuming, and hard to prepare and to support. As a product manager in different software vendors, I was also responsible for building software training programs, and that I don't know.
It must be really interesting to be on the other side of the coin now, isn't it? From someone that used to be teaching and training, and now you're building something for them. Must be quite a fulfilling experience, isn't it? What all your pain points were, you can make sure you meet them as you build your product.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so let's start with the first question that we have today. What challenges do companies face when applying traditional software training solutions in the modern world? Dipanjan, maybe that is a question for you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have worked on building entire training programs for large-scale organizations as well as, let's say, universities and small organizations. So, and I've also consumed some of these trainings, right? So typically considering, especially, let's say, technical or software-oriented training, some of the major challenges which I have seen, or some of the major aspects where companies often struggle or spend a lot of time includes one is your content. They spend a lot of time trying to convert what content they have and to reuse it in different trainings, which means a lot of trainings are basically extensions of an existing training. So you could literally reuse, let's say 50 to 60% of the content and add in some new things. But what they'll have to do is they have to kind of start building the whole training program from scratch. It's very difficult to kind of migrate or reuse content from one training to another, even though, let's say, there are a lot of common aspects which could potentially be reused. So I think that is one thing where I've seen them end up spending a lot of time. The other aspect, which is very important and yet a lot of challenges, is your engagement. So typically any kind of trainings, especially trainings related to software technical trainings, have to be like interactive, hands-on. It is not like you just come in and give a speech and go away, right? You have to kind of show live coding examples. You have to show how something works so that they can get to know the features of a particular product they will be using in the future or when they are upskilling themselves. So that is where lack of these kind of personalized experiences in terms of hands-on experiences, them trying these things out and then getting feedback in terms of how they are doing in terms of the training. Those are some areas where there is a lot of challenge, because often what happens in traditional training experiences is someone just comes in, shows a bunch of slides, maybe some screenshots, at the max, some kind of a recording, and just goes away, right? And then the idea is, okay, you figure out stuff from the documentation by yourself. And that doesn't work that well, because the idea of the whole point of the training is upskilling. And that is where this kind of interactive engagement, getting proper feedback, these are aspects which are also like very important. And that's where companies face a lot of challenge. And the last part, obviously, is maintaining these trainings, creating these trainings, and of course, the whole aspect of operations, because you need to make sure that you are able to not just build some kind of a software training, but you're able to easily integrate it with your existing platforms. You're able to easily kind of add the content, modify it, reuse it as necessary, be able to perform, let's say, instant deployments or integrations, and have some kind of capabilities like, let's say, automated grading, where when someone is undertaking a training, they can get some immediate feedback instead of, let's say, waiting a week and then kind of getting some feedback, okay, how did they do on this training? So I think these are the main aspects related to like content engagement and operations, and of course, automation of some of these aspects. Yeah.
Very interesting, DJ. I'm just not so used to calling you DJ, but very interesting for that sharing. I'm curious, you said, that you touch a few points and you touch about the content piece, right? You said usually people, although the content is similar, 50, 60% of it, but they can't reuse it. What's the reason behind that?
So basically, like the platform which they are using probably could be a legacy system, or the way it's like you have to have the entire content by yourself, like you have to build it up yourself with, be it starting with a document or starting with entering it somewhere, and then you have to put in the relevant hands-on aspects or maybe a video recording and all that. So that is where it's like you can't just move over some things and kind of augment and start building it. This is where you have to like start the entire process from scratch, make sure everything is in one place, and then you maybe upload it to that platform and then you go about it. So the whole element of reusability decreases because of limitations with said platforms which are potentially being used. Yeah.
Okay. Denise, what do you think?
Well, I want to take a step a little back and discuss what traditional training for software looks like usually. I did several training myself, and I participated in several of them, like from the software vendors. And usually it's like you as participant, as a student, you go to some training center, because these trainings are usually instructor-led, or if you get a large group in your organization or between several organizations, the instructor can come to your place, to your location, and do this training on site. Either way, the instructor first has to prepare the training infrastructure. Usually take a set of PCs or laptops and install some software that will be used for training, like ERP software or system software like operating systems and something like that. Usually, as from my experience, the instructor can spend up to the whole day on preparing this class for training. And after that, the set of people usually no more than 15, because it's hard to fit a lot of people in one room. Just gather around, and the instructor does some presentations, and then the students do some exercises with software, and this cycle changes for 2 or 3 days usually. That's how it looks like. And the main problem with such kinds of training is they are not scalable. You have, first, it's expensive. You need to send an instructor all around the world. If you have a multinational corporation, then one day you do training in Brazil, the next day is in Australia, and it's hard for an instructor to. Yes, it's hard to schedule it, because people have to gather in one room, in one place, without their work to do, and sit there for 2 or 3 days all the time. And it's hard to prepare, because this preparation of the infrastructure takes time, it takes place, and also it should be always updated, because the software gets updated always. So all this infrastructure management is also very, very important. You can replace this traditional training with some kind of online approach that DJ mentioned, but usually what they do, they just put PowerPoint presentation and videos on some site onto LMS, and leave it everything to just for the students to play around, and that's hardly engaged. It causes a lot of engagement from the people, and it does not do a lot of the good learning results.
Thank you. Well, as a learner, next time when I attend a course, I will pay attention and appreciate the trainer a bit more. I didn't know how much work went behind, in preparing for a course, whether it's online or face-to-face. So, thank you for sharing that. Let's go to the next question here. It's actually a very basic question. And the question is, what is a virtual lab? I mean, if being a non-user, if you just go online and start Googling it, odd things do come out. It is not a platform that people recognize or know what it is. So I thought today would be a great chance to share with the audience today, what is a virtual lab? Denise, do you want to take that question?
Yes, sure. Okay, in a more wide term, the virtual lab is a kind of environment. It's a lab where you do some experiments, you play with something. It could be in a very, very extended term, like a physics lab, virtual physics labs, or virtual chemistry labs. But mostly when we talk about the virtual lab, we talk about virtual IT lab. This is the lab that is used for software training. And by what it means that this is the lab where you could play around with some software in the training purpose, of course, mostly. If we speak officially, the virtual lab is a platform that provides a cloud-based hands-on software training environment for learning by doing. But this is very official. Let's simplify that. Essentially, the lab provides the student with pre-configured cloud-based sandbox environment with all the live software pre-installed. This is not simulation, this is real live software that could be accessible 24/7 from any time, from any place, with just a browser. No specific configuration or software installation is required on the student side. And that's already huge, because the students can just get access to pre-configured software anytime without further needing any technical skills or communicating with technical personnel. And that's already allows you to do some kind of sandbox playgrounds for the software. But since the virtual labs is targeted for training, on top of this cloud access to the software, there is the instructional layer. This is step-by-step guided instructions that are provided to the students along this virtual environment. And these instructions, not just the text, it's interactive, because these instructions can be configured so that they kind of track the student actions inside the software and give the immediate feedback for the student if something goes wrong and the student doing something wrong. So this way, the instructions are used to guide user or the students through the software, and essentially they take the role of the instructor. So this way, the labs will be self-sufficient in that the student can join them, do the training, get the feedback, and get the skills with the real software in a real environment. That's the idea of the virtual lab. But there is also a second aspect to the platform as well, because it provides a lot of tools for the instruction to prepare such kind of training. From the ease of managing this cloud environment, preparation of instructions, and gathering analytics of user data. That's brief description. I guess
Thank you. That's not a brief description, but that was a very comprehensive description. Maybe at the end of this webinar, you get a chance to sort of demo to our audience today how that looks like.
I will try.
Also, having said that, I think you may be a bit biased because you are the product manager for the virtual lab. Let's go to DJ now. I mean, as a new user, being an instructor, DJ, in your views, do you think virtual lab is a good training platform or tool to be used?
Yeah, considering technical trainings related to software, IT, and so on, definitely it could be useful because as a trainer, what happens is you will get like this cloud platform, right, where literally you can set things up easily without worrying about how other people are going to set everything up, right, including installations and all that, because it's like a one-time thing where if you set it up on the environment, anyone can then access it in the future to take the trainings or even update the training. So I think in that way, this cloud platform on which usually a virtual lab resides makes things easier in terms of building the training, as well as consuming the training, because anyone can access it from sitting anywhere in the world. I think, as Dennis mentioned earlier, a lot of trainings end up becoming very expensive because either a group of people have to be sent somewhere or someone comes and takes the training. You have infrastructure cost, operations cost, so many other things. Here, anyone can take this training sitting at their home, in the office, wherever. So I think accessibility is very important here, and a virtual lab can definitely improve that. The other aspect, which is most relevant for me, is that it's very easy to build, like, let's say, interactive, hands-on oriented training experiences or lessons, right, where the focus is not on just speaking or showing a PowerPoint presentation, but the focus is on doing, where you can literally like form a sequence of steps of what should be done, what code needs to be put in next, what button needs to be clicked next, and so on. And you build a lesson, and then everyone kind of goes through it and does this interactive thing. And of course, you can get instant feedback, which is the best part. You don't need to wait till the end of the day. You can immediately get feedback. If something is wrong, you try to go back and correct it. So I think those are the things which a virtual lab especially focuses on, and basically, yeah, makes lessons more interactive and very cost effective also, because and improves the accessibility. So yeah, those are the things which come to my mind when I think of virtual labs, especially for trainings.
Thank you, DJ, for that, again, very comprehensive answer. That's good to know. I think our audience will appreciate your insights because, having used it, that's always the best feedback, right? Versus, something that you see online or just a marketing brochure for that matter. Actually, the next question is very related because a lot of times when my team, within the Alimera group goes out and speak to their clients, clients always come and say, how has virtual lab been beneficial? What are some of the examples, concrete examples that we can share? So I think it'd be great, if either of you or maybe Denise, you can start first to just, give some examples of how you've seen virtual lab being used and how it has helped an organization or a trainer in any perspective, right? Either way.
Okay. Well, I just give the example of one of our customers. This is Acronis. Acronis is a cybersecurity software vendor. That's global. It has several thousand employees and several hundred partners all around the world. And they do trainings, of course, because all software vendors do trainings. And they have separate tracks for trainings. So one is for employee training, and second is for partner and customer training. The Acronis complement their traditional online training with virtual lab. After getting some reading, watching some videos, the users can practice working with the live software environment in the sandbox. Each user, what is interesting for Acronis, each user gets their own isolated and cloud environment that is completely isolated from everything else, which is automatically configured specifically for this user when the user starts the lab. And before the introduction of the virtual lab, such live practice required a couple of hours of manual setup by qualified personnel. So Acronis now trained more than several thousand people using the virtual lab, and that's actually more than 10,000 hours of the personnel that was free from the configuring these virtual environments. That's huge. Also, as I said, there are several courses that labs implemented, so they are targeted in different products and show different features for different products, and so they are implemented in different courses. The Acronis also provides a sandbox access to their partners to play around this software using the virtual lab. This is not a guided lab, this is just playground lab. It's a different kind of virtual lab. And generally, there is user survey that Acronis did recently among their users of the virtual lab is very positive. More than 80% of users say that virtual lab was very helpful in achieving the training goals, in helping them to better understand the software, because the software is complex. And if you just start playing around with in any way, you can get lost. The labs provide you guidance where help you to start using the software the most effectively. That was the responses that Acronis got from the training.
Thank you for sharing the example. I guess cybersecurity is now a major issue, isn't it, around the world? A lot of issues with people hacking to different places. Organizations need to make sure that their firewalls are secure and etc. So if this training has been helpful to them, I'm glad that the product actually worked and supported them to meet their goals from the customer's perspective, and also in supporting their distributors and partners with a sandbox for the salespeople. DJ, how about you? Have you encountered any of the scenarios where virtual lab has been beneficial?
Yeah, I think the major aspect, again, coming back to the point of training regarding any kind of technical skills related to either learning about how to use a software product or learning, like we do a lot of programs related to artificial intelligence and data science. So there, again, it's not just about learning a bunch of concepts, but how to actually apply it towards the industry. So the advantages here would be if you use something like this, which obviously would be pretty obvious, is that with tools like virtual labs, you can build in hands-on examples, hands-on exercises, assignments, and so on. And what happens is the engagement increases, definitely, which is something which we have observed also, because the people who are taking the training, they will not just maybe get bored after a while listening to a really long lecture, which can sometimes happen. People start switching off, especially if someone is just going on speaking about some concepts without even showing, okay, how to actually use this. So I think those are the scenarios where we have definitely seen improvements in terms of the student engagement rate. The other part is usually any of these platforms would end up having some kind of analytics also available, which can help in you understanding as a trainer how the students who are taking it are doing, how they're engaging with the training itself. And of course, you don't need to sit with every student providing them feedback on their code or on their execution of the steps they're trying out, because the platform itself can give feedback. So I think these are the ways in which it can make your trainings more scalable, make it more engaging. I think, yeah, those are the two main advantages which I see. Yeah.
Thank you, DJ. I guess from your sharing earlier, with a platform like Virtual Lab, it enables you as a trainer to spend more time in engaging with the student, right? Because you can, I mean, the platform itself allows the student to learn hands-on in a real life case or whatever that could be. But then at the same time, you can see and sort of give feedback along the way when the student is working on that course itself. That's where I guess the benefit, right? Because usually, I guess, initially when both of you started, talk about how much time is spent for a trainer to put the content together, to get that, I think, and that was only at the beginning. I guess when the training starts, you probably be really tired. So having some human interaction where you can talk directly and engage directly with your students, seeing them succeed, is actually quite motivating, isn't it?
Definitely, totally agree. Yeah.
All right. Before I move on, I just wanted to remind the people online that, if you have any questions, please feel free to post. If not, I'll continue with a list of questions that we have been compiling from our clients and other customers that come to us. Let's move on to the next question. So the next question that we have here is, how do virtual labs benefit instructors and learners? Denise, do you want to share your perspective?
Well, let me start. First, once again, a little bit step back. The virtual lab actually is built around kind of scientific approach. There is so-called learning pyramid that displays the retention of skills and knowledge that could be learned in different learning activities. It's right now known. You can Google that if you want. But I just briefly described that the lectures provide only 5% retention of the skills, and reading something provides only 10% retention. You only have 10% of knowledge that you read from the reading. Videos and watching the demos can get a retention rate up to 30%. Meanwhile, the practice activity, doing something, provides a solid 75% of retention. That's why the reason about several principles that are behind the virtual lab, that's called active learning and collaborative learning. The active learning actually is the option that provides instruction to create and stream interactive learning materials specifically designed for the virtual use. This practice doing provides the much more better skill acquisition for the students to comparing to traditional training solution. That's primary idea. For this another idea for the student, another benefit for the student, we already mentioned that training now become available anytime, anywhere without any additional setup, just with a browser, and it provides the student with immediate feedback. So this is not simulation. They get better skills, they get better abilities, and they have better option to do this training. For the instructions, it's even more. First, this on-demand access for the lab is, of course, allows to free instructor time and allows them to focus better on communicating with students or to prepare the trainings, to provide the better training content. The labs provide also a lot of automation that are targeted to save instructor time. The labs automatically provide complex software environments in the minutes that could be personalized to each student. They could auto-grade the student actions. All of this allows to scale the number of students per instructor from 10 to 15 to around 1,000, maybe. One instructor can do training for thousands of students. That's really possible. Another important thing is analytics, because all the actions of the student within the lab are tracked and stored into the data lake. And this data lake could be analyzed by instructors using BI tools, by building specific reports and dashboards. There are options to track business metrics like number of users, number of students, number of sessions, and educational metrics like training metrics like success rate, number of mistakes the students do, difficulty levels of different tasks and labs. These metrics can be used to continuously improve the lab. The idea of the lab is not that you build a perfect lab from scratch. This is something what we call continuous improvement. You build the lab, you deploy it, you start training, you get the analytics, you see where it behaves not very well, and you improve that. Maybe you rewrite some instructions, maybe you make them more precise, maybe you split some lab into 2 labs and do something better. That's the idea behind the lab.
That aligns very much with what DJ said earlier, when you were saying that, it's really hard for instructors to actually repurpose the content because, once you build that, it's like sort of built and it's ready. You can't sort of break it apart and sort of tweak it. But now, Denise, what you're sharing is with the virtual lab, you can see through analytics how students are performing, how they are reacting or applying certain approach to the course itself, and be able to tweak it without, having to reset the whole training course. Did I get it right?
Yes, exactly. And one more thing that I wanted to mention, that, as I said, in virtual lab, one of the primary idea is to save instructor time. And so one of this way is to reduce the training preparation time and costs. So for that, we introduced the tool that's called the lab recorder. This tool allows instructor to automatically generate templates of the lab instructions for the student just by doing some actions in the software. Let me try to show you how that works.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Just a second. We are now in the main page of the labs. Usually, we suggest that the virtual lab should be used to train users on complex enterprise software like ERP, CRM, LMS, and similar. For today's demo, we'll do a more simple scenario with Google Sheets. We are now in the authoring view of the lab. The virtual lab provides the learner with a cloud-based virtual environment with a pre-configured software and the instructions overlay. The environment for the lab should be configured on the settings tab, and the instructions should be written on the content tab. These are generally a kind of step-by-step instructions that the learner has to follow. The main bottleneck of the hands-on labs is that they usually require a lot of personal guidance that doesn't allow you to scale your classes. Content preparation for the labs could also be tedious and time-consuming, since the author should describe all the steps that the learner should follow to complete the exercise. You can see the example of such step-by-step guidance that was created manually. Sometimes it's also useful to create screencast video to accompany the lab instructions, and that also requires additional time. As a solution, we propose the lab recorder toolkit, which simplifies the lab creation process. This tool will allow the instructor to record the actions needed to perform certain scenarios. Let's say they want to train our learners how to create pivot tables. Let's create a new task, give it a name, like pivot table creation. But instead of writing instructions manually, we'll start the recording. This action will record all my actions as an instructor and will create a flow, a list of instructions to interact with the software UI components. This flow can also be used later to auto-generate the screencast videos of the recorded scenario. Now we just do the required configuration actions with the software that the learner will have to follow. Let's do this. Insert pivot table, select a new sheet, add some rows like division row, another row a subdivision, and add some values like number of units, and we want to do a sum of it, and also price per unit, and for that we select an average value. Okay, now we achieved the final result that we want our learners to achieve, and now we can stop the record. When we stop the recorder, the lab recorder will process all of our actions and will generate the student flow from it. You will see the set of instructions will be generated now. Here it is. Of course, this instructions is just a template. You see that all my actions within the software was followed and the instruction steps were generated. We can use it to set up additional formatting, to do some rephrasing, add hints, add images and everything like that. But still, you can see that in less than a minute, we generated a lot of guidance for our students. So this later could be used to provide the instructions for the lab. Also, this process where I was creating some data could also be recorded and converted to the screencast video.
Thank you for sharing that, Denise. Just curious, you were using an Excel pivot table to show the example. It's not exactly software training, isn't it? So I guess virtual labs is applicable, could be used for a lot of tools and enterprise softwares.
Yes, the primary idea, as I said, is that to use the virtual labs of kind of complex software, because the complex software training usually complex. But of course, you can use it to more traditional software like Excel or any office tools. But it's really open to what kind of training you want to provide.
Okay. So Dipanjan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think this pretty much kind of shows the benefits, right? Like it helps save time for the instructors or trainers because you can leverage tools like this to quickly build hands-on examples or hands-on trainings, expand on it from an existing one by dragging, dropping as necessary, adding in elements at specific steps. The other aspects, of course, is as we discussed with the grading, you can automatically grade assignments or assessments in that way. As Dennis mentioned, you can scale these trainings to a large number of students also as necessary. And of course, you can track things like the engagement rate or the performance with inbuilt analytical features for virtual labs. So I think those are the things which are really beneficial, and of course helps the learners to learn things in a more engaging way. Things like active learning helps them stay focused on what they are learning rather than starting to drift away. And again, from an instructor standpoint, you don't need to set things up every time you're taking a training. Like once something has been built, that can literally be reused again and again for future trainings. Yeah.
That sounds really, really beneficial. Let's move on to a slightly more technical question, because I've heard this again from quite a lot of the customers. They're a bit hesitant because obviously they're not familiar with virtual labs to begin with. I mean, they hear about coding labs, they hear about LMS and stuff like that, but virtual labs seems to be a bit of a mystery to them. Denise, how do we deploy software for training with a virtual lab? Is it very tricky, or is it just a simple click of a few buttons? Could you share with the audience here today?
Well, the question is a bit more complicated because it really depends on what kind of software you want to train your users on.
Okay.
And depending on what the type of software you get, the different types of deployment. The most obvious one is just to install the software inside this virtual environment. And you can do it yourself as an instructor. If you know if this is too complicated, this is the way you can communicate with your technical staff, but should only be done once for, as DJ mentioned, for thousands of users later. This way, the instructor will have full control of the installed software, if it's configuration. The students will get isolated copies of the software that is completely safe for them to try and explore. I know the students sometimes are afraid to experiment with software in their workplace because they're afraid to break something. And if you work in bank, breaking the financial system is not something you want to do. This sandbox, this pre-installed software provides you all the tools and the safety to do the experimentations. The other option is for the cloud-only software, like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud, for example, like I showed now with Google Sheets. Obviously, it's impossible to install it locally, even in the virtual environment, because it resides in the cloud. But it's possible to use the lab environment so that your students will get the controlled and guided access to this cloud software through the virtual labs in a guided manner. So we can pre-configure the cloud access for each student. We can track and grade the actions like this software that is installed locally and gather user statistics. For all the other user experience, it will be like they're working directly with the cloud. And there is another more complicated option. This is a kind of hybrid between the first two. You can have a part of software installed locally in the virtual environment, and that software and the user with it can interact with some cloud-based software. You can think of more easily configured software like Dropbox or OneDrive, something like that, where you have installed part and you have a cloud part, but for the security software, that's also possible.
Thank you, Denny. Spoken like a true product specialist. You don't say, oh, yes, it's simple. You contextualize it where it depends on what software we're using and how that looks like, etc. So thank you for that. We are coming towards the end of our session today. I actually have just one more last question for our speakers today. So the question is, how can virtual lab boost software training or any training for that matter? But, I was hoping for both DJ and Denise, to just let me know in one sentence, how do you think virtual lab can boost software training? Basically, a takeaway for our audience today. And of course, for the rest of our audience today, there's a white paper that we just published on how we can boost software training with virtual labs. That will be sent to you later after the webinar. But let's hear from DJ first, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as I was mentioning, the way virtual labs can boost typically any kind of these hands-on focused trainings or trying to build more engaging trainings is, one is, of course, using some of these features of virtual labs. You can record a training itself in terms of what the students or the participants of the training should be doing. And these automated tools help instructors create this really fast. I think Dennis was showing, right? Kind of cuts away a lot of the manual effort needed. And that way you can focus more on actual content rather than trying to find out ways to build that content more effectively, because you have these tools to aid you in that. So you can focus more on the actual content itself. And of course, instructors can basically see how people are engaging with the content, whether they are doing all the assignments as necessary. Features like automated grading will definitely help them scale it up to more number of users. Other aspects, of course, include things like your cloud native or cloud first setup, and also that you can customize it based on, as Dennis was mentioning, the place where you want to do this training. And in that way, once you configure some of these labs or some of these trainings using virtual labs, it's all about just reusing the next time around. So you don't need to set up everything from scratch each and every time you have to do the training. And also you have capabilities, I think, to integrate these things with existing systems like your existing learning management systems, LMS. And of course, the hands-on aspect with things like active learning makes things more engaging and provides a much better learning experience to the students. So yeah, those are the main things those are the main areas of how virtual labs can boost software training.
Thank you, DJ. That was definitely more than one sentence. But Denise, how about you? How would you describe how a virtual lab can boost software training or any training?
Well, that was a really comprehensive answer from DJ.
Exactly. He stole the show today.
There is almost nothing to add here yet. Once again, I'll repeat that primary idea is that it can scale the trainings by the magnitudes from 10 to 1,000 people, literally from 10 to 1,000 people who do the training simultaneously. It's also frees instructor time, so you can have more instructors doing training preparations and not doing actual training. But another aspect of what I wanted to mention, it now provides you the training not like a black box. You open this black box, this analytics, and you know what's going on inside your training, how you're doing, how your students are performing, and that allows you to better adopt your training to the personal student needs. That's also important, so that this could increase the quality of the training.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And thank you for everyone that's been online today. We are happy to take any questions if you have, or if you don't have any questions for the moment, that's fine. You can drop us an email and we will definitely send you the white paper that actually has been authored by DJ. He's been helping us to sort of review it based on the experience of training. So it's really an interesting piece for you to understand a bit more about the world of software training and how certain platforms can help. But is there any other last words from DJ or Denise before we close our session today?
All good from my side, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much covered all the major aspects of virtual labs and like how they can help in kind of like not just building, but providing better training. So yeah, I think, yeah, we pretty much covered most of the things. Yeah.
Great.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening. We've covered almost all the questions. Once again, we continuously improve the products, so there will be new exciting features very soon that probably we can share with you by email or calls. Feel free to contact us.
Great. All right then. Thank you everyone. Look forward to the next webinar. Thank you to the speakers too.